Good evening. Welcome to the August 19th, 2024 meeting of Troy City Council. We ask all those in the room to please silence their cell phones for the duration of the meeting. Invocation and pledge tonight will be by Mrs. Sneed. Please stand.
Dear God, please help us remember our blessings, including the blessing of the wonderful city we live in, and help us be mindful of using our gift to help others. We ask for protection for our city and for those who work to protect us. Guide all those who make decisions and help us to deliberate purposefully and consider fairly the questions before us. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mrs. Knight, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Whidden.
Here.
Mr. Twist.
Here.
Mrs. Snee.
Here.
Mr. Phillips.
Present.
Mrs. Marshall.
Here.
Mr. Schilling.
Present.
Mrs. Westfall.
Here.
Mr. Sievert.
Here.
Mr. Pierce.
Move to excuse Mr. Pierce.
Second.
Motion to excuse Mr. Pierce by Mr. Sievert, seconded by Mr. Schilling. Mrs. Knight, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall.
Yes.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall.
Yes.
Mr. Sievert.
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Pierce is excused.
Mrs. Knight, could you please read the minutes of the August 5th council meeting?
Minutes of Council, August 5, 2024. A public hearing was held on ordinance number 02824, a rezoning. Committee reports. Community and Economic Development Committee recommended legislation be prepared authorizing approval of a $200,000 loan to the owners of Fermentum Enterprises, LLC. Regarding the annexation of roadway adjacent to Waco on South County Road 25A, committee recommended that the pieces of legislation be adopted. Regarding the final plat of the reserves at Cliff Oaks, there was a majority recommendation that the legislation be prepared to accept the final plat of the reserve at Cliff Oaks, and a minority report to not support accepting the final plat. Streets and Sidewalks Committee recommended legislation be prepared authorizing bidding for South Stanfield Road Reconstruction Phase 2. Resolution number R38, 2024, Municipal Services for 2.300 acres annexation by Waco was given first reading and adopted. Resolution R39, 2024, the buffer requirements for the 2.300 acre annexation adjacent to Waco, first reading and adopted. Resolution number R40, 2024, the consent to the annexation of 2.300 acres adjacent to Waco, first reading and adopted. Resolution number R41, 2024, regarding the annexation of 0.129 acres adjacent to Waco was given first reading and adopted. Resolution number R42, 2024, the buffer requirement for the 0.129 acres adjacent to Waco was given first reading and adopted. Resolution number R43, 2024, consent of the 0.129 acres adjacent to Waco was given first reading and adopted. Resolution number R44, 2024, application of Fermentum Enterprises for a loan was given first reading, discussed, and adopted. Ordinance number 028, 2024, rezoning of property located at or near 5180 East Water Street was given public hearing and second reading. Ordinance number 029, 2024, South Stanfield Road Reconstruction Project, authorization was given first reading and was adopted. Ordinance number 030, 2024, final plat reserved at Cliff Oaks subdivision, first reading and adopted. Following various comments, council adjourned at 7:47 p.m.
Move to adopt the minutes as read.
Second.
Motion to adopt the minutes by Mr. Twist, second by Mr. Phillips. Mrs. Knight, could you please call the roll?
Mrs. Snead?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Approved.
Moving on to committee reports tonight, we have one from Finance, Mr. Schilling.
I'm finance.
Mr.
Do
Schilling.
you want me to do finance?
No, that's
It's up to
that's
you.
fine. It's
I don't have the copy of it. Did you have the copy in front of you?
you should.
I have it, yeah.
Yep,
I'll
sorry.
read it if you want to. I mean.
My bad. Mr. Chairman of Finance, Mr. Sievert, can do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Schilling must have been here for the,
Thank you, Mr. President.
he's trying to get your title.
This committee met August 12th to consider recommending the amendment of the agreement with Peterson Construction Company for a construction management at risk, pre-construction and construction services agreement for the valve replacement project at the water treatment plant at a cost not to exceed $1,357,215. This process is discussed in the detailed report. While the total amount exceeds the original $1 million estimate, funds are available in the water fund. Wherefore, it is the recommendation of the committee that legislation be prepared authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety, that's in there twice, to amend the correction management CMAR pre-construction and construction services agreement with Peterson Construction Company of Wapakoneta, Ohio, to perform construction services to the valve replacement project at the water treatment plant at a cost not to exceed $1,357,151, which is different than what's above. Are we doing 215 or 151?
151 is what the resolution has, right? Mr.
Okay.
Knight?
151.
So I will amend the summary report to say a cost not to exceed $1,357,151, and that would be then consistent with the recommendation read at council, and that's respectfully submitted by Mr. Schilling, Ms. Westfall, and myself as chairman.
Any additional questions or corrections? All righty, moving on to law and ordinance. Mr. Whidden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee members Marshall and Whidden met August 12th to review the recommendation of the Troy Planning Commission that parcels number D08-101-816 and D08-00600 located at or near 518 East Water Street be rezoned from M2 Light Industrial District to OR1 Office Residential District. This committee supports the recommendation of the Troy Planning Commission regarding the proposed rezoning and recommends that council adopt ordinance number 028-2024. This is respectfully submitted by Mrs. Marshall, Mr. Twist, and myself as chair.
Any questions on that? Thank you, Mr. Whidden. Citizen comments on any reports or agenda items tonight. 2 minutes. Seeing none, we shall move on. Before we get to resolutions, the first resolution I have a conflict with. I am on the Public Defender's Board, so I'm going to ask Mr. Phillips to read that piece of legislation, and we will go from there. He needs to be the presiding officer on that. Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Knight, would you please read Resolution R45-2024?
Resolution number R45-2024, resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to enter into an agreement with the Miami County Public Defenders Commission for 2025, cost not to exceed $24,409.35, which is the same amount it's been for several years. First reading.
Move to suspend.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Twist and a second by Mr. Schilling. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert.
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Twist and a second by Mr. Seaver to adopt the resolution. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Marshall.
Yes.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall.
Yes.
Mr. Sievert.
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
I hand the gavel back to the President.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. We will, correct that conflict next time around. Mrs. Knight, could you please read Resolution R 46, 2024?
Resolution number R 46, 2024, resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to enter into a construction management at risk CMAR contract with Peterson Construction Company of Wapakoneta, Ohio, for the water treatment plant valve replacement project. This is a cost not to exceed $1,357,151. First reading.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Motion to suspend by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Sievert. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall.
Yes.
Mr. Sievert.
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall.
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion adopted by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Phillips. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Westfall.
Yes.
Mr. Sievert.
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall.
Yes.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Moving on to ordinances. Mrs. Knight, could you please read Ordinance O 28, 2024?
Ordinance number O28, 2024, an ordinance changing the zoning of parcel numbers D08 101816 and D08 006000, located at or near 518 East Water Street in the city of Troy, Ohio, from M2 Light Industrial District to OR1 Office Residence District. This has been recommended for approval by the Troy Planning Commission. This is the third reading.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Sievert, seconded by Mr. Phillips. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Sievert.
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall.
Yes.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall.
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted.
Mrs. Knight, do we have any communications or announcements this evening?
No, sir.
Mr. Titterington, any comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. I'm just working my way around the table. Mayor, have any comments?
No, just we had a great time last night at the Dayton Philharmonic. I had my directing debut.
You did a fine job.
It was a lot of fun, but very good concert, good turnout, and other than that, nothing else. Oh, we do have Tour de Dunk this weekend.
This is true.
The Halloween stuff's out, Mayor. When's trick or treat?
October 31st.
That will please all or some of the people that are watching. Mr. Titterington,
Well,
now that you don't have any announcements, what else would you like to say?
now I have one.
Landfill or what?
I'll cut this one off. No, nothing about dime mill. No, we do have Labor Day, which is normally a council meeting. That's Monday, September 2nd. So the council meeting will be on the 3rd at 7 o'clock. There will be no changes to trash and recycling pickup that evening, or that week, I should say. That is all I have. Thank you.
All righty. Mr. Kerber, Director of Law.
Mr. President, I have nothing for this council this evening.
All righty. That moves us on to, we'll start there and work our way back. Mr. Twist.
Nothing.
Mr. Phillips.
Had a great week at the fair with the Republican tent that was out there, and it was well attended. The young people were phenomenal that I saw, showing animals and all that sort of stuff, and the Grand Reserve champions and stuff. It was a very nice, well attended event. So I'm very happy we had great weather for that.
Great. Mr. Whidden.
Nothing this evening.
Mrs. Marshall.
I do. I just wanted to wish all the staff and students that will be starting school this week lots of luck and hope that they have a great year.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes, I had a question for Mr. Titterington, please. Or if I should go through you.
Go well.
Yes, I was
Very well.
wondering, have we received the authorization or the approval for the grant monies for Crawford Street project?
We have, so we have many grants out there. We have received all but the CDBG money that you're talking about, I believe,
Okay,
part of which is the rec trail, and then the plaza coming down to Crawford Street. We did receive the state earmark,
the
which is
160.
more specifically focused on Crawford.
Right.
But the other one, as we had mentioned when we reported and went through the council for the application process, we expect to get a final notification next month on that.
Okay, some reason I had that in August. I apologize.
No, it's early, sometime in September.
That sounds good. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Westfall.
I just want to reiterate what Mr. Phillips said. I have a lot of friends who have children and grandchildren that showed at the fair and appreciate all the hard work everyone puts in to show their animals and take care of their animals. It was a good fair.
Mrs. Sneed, back from open house.
I'll join Mrs. Marshall in wishing all school employees, including ourselves, a very good school year starting tomorrow. So please watch for students that may be getting on buses or driving to schools.
Mr. Siebert.
I would like to congratulate Brett Harshbarger, who was a classmate of mine who in high school and who recently retired after 24 years? 24 years, I believe, at the Troy Fire Department, and he will be missed. He was definitely a leader of that group over there and went through a lot of changes at the fire department and was a good servant for the city of Troy and will be missed. So good luck to Brett Harshbarger.
I just want to say, we've had a lot of activity in the last couple of weeks, great concerts, people downtown, and the last one down on this Prouty Plaza 2 weeks ago was who?
Darren Bell.
Darren Bell. Everybody that made comments seems to, whoever's in charge of that, they want them to come back. Last night was good, even at Arbogast. It was probably, 75% full, lower arena. We do have the Tour Donut coming up, and there's entertainment Friday for that, and Saturday. Please, with the school and the donut, please have some patience out driving, particularly on Main Street or anywhere downtown and or North Market Street, at least till 2 o'clock Saturday. Extra careful then, anywhere at all times. Other than that, citizens have any comments tonight? Come forward and please give Mrs. Knight your name and address and
Steve
have your say.
975 Dickerson. I just want to tell you how disappointed I was with last week's town hall meeting about the comprehensive plan. I think it was not well done. I felt like I was in third grade getting led through hand by hand, looking at a bunch of posters that were up. Felt a little sense of envy for the committee that met the night before and got an hour's worth of verbal discussion about the comprehensive plan. I see that Mr. Roselle and Mrs. Westfall were there in the audience. So I'm not sure how much, I don't think the citizenry got a very good idea what's in that comprehensive plan. I don't know if council does. All I can say is for a town hall meeting, it didn't meet my expectations, but maybe I don't know exactly what a town hall is supposed to be. But anyway, I thought it was very, very disappointing. I don't know if the public is going to get another opportunity to get a look at that draft or not. I mean, it's 174 pages. very hard for me to read on my iPhone, despite the little thing out in the hallway that says, okay, you can download it, which is okay, except I was gonna try to transfer it, but except that the document was too large for me to download to a PC where I could read it. Since then, I've gotten copies of the document, which I'll print out as long as the paper supply lasts. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know, I was disappointed. I don't know about anybody else, but for a document that's supposed to last for 20 years, which will probably be beyond my lifetime, I thought it should have been a little more, or a little better presented to the public and probably to council. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Steve, I do think it's online now, right? Is that correct, Patrick?
It is.
Mm-hmm. So I know it may be hard to see on your iPhone, but for anybody who's watching this video, I do think that it is now after that meeting, and I concur with your assessment. I was not overly impressed with the presentation either, and I shared that with some people as well. But the core information dissemination is available online. And the other issue, I mean, if you really...
It is now. It wasn't before the meeting.
No, it was right after the meeting, correct.
Yeah, right after.
Yeah. And the other issue that it just seems like the usual suspects were there, and we always struggle with how do we disseminate information, and people then, don't get involved and then want to critique it. And so I would strongly suggest that anybody who wants to look at that, feel free to look at it online, reach back out to Structure Point. I'm sure they'll answer any questions, reach back out through us. But to echo your sentiment, I don't know that it was presented that well, and it was somewhat disappointing to see the level of participation. I think there were 36 people there, of which almost every member of council would have accounted for about a third of those people. Mm-hmm. So, and the people who were involved in the city and that stuff counted as well. So we probably hit maybe 12 to 15 people at the most that were there. So please get involved. It's not done yet, but we got to have participation from the community, and that's what that was designed to do.
Oh, yeah. And before we all wake up, it's all going to be and say, oh, abracadabra, you had your chance.
The consensus of the council members that were there are, agree with you, the ones I spoke to. I mean, we had 1, 2, 6, 7 of us.
Yeah, there's quite a few of you.
Majority of them were there, and
it wasn't conducive to any.
No, and I got comments from a couple people I ran into Friday. It was a lot of reading for somebody that wanted to show up and see what was going on. Yeah, so it was unfortunate they didn't do the video that they did at Planning Commission, or apparently Wednesday night.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not,